Have you ever felt like someone was pulling your strings behind the scenes? Like a friend, a boss, or even a partner was subtly nudging you into doing things you wouldn't normally do, without you even realizing it? We often call this manipulation, and it's more common and more powerful than we think. But what if you could see it coming? What if you could learn to spot the signs before you fall into the trap? That's exactly what we're here to talk about. And to do it, we're going back in time to learn from one of the most controversial minds in history, Niccolo Machiavelli. Now, don't worry. This isn't going to be a boring history lesson. This is about learning the rules of the game. A game you're already in, whether you know it or not. And if you don't know the rules, you'll keep losing. So, who was Machiavelli, and why should we listen to a guy who lived 500 years ago? Machiavelli was a diplomat, political theorist, and philosopher from Renaissance Italy. His most famous book, The Prince, was written as a guide for rulers on how to gain power, keep it, and use it, even if it meant using deception, manipulation, or fear. At first glance, it sounds cold and ruthless, but if you dig deeper, you'll find something more powerful, a brutally honest guide to human behavior. Machiavelli didn't write about how the world should be. He wrote about how the world really is, full of ambition, ego, and people trying to get ahead. And that's exactly why his ideas are so useful today, because once you understand how manipulation works, you can defend yourself and even turn the tables if needed. Let's start with one of Machiavelli's core beliefs. People are not always good. That might sound cynical, but it's a reality check. Machiavelli argued that while people are capable of kindness and virtue, they're also driven by self-interest. When push comes to shove, most people will choose what benefits them, even if it hurts someone else. And if you assume everyone always has good intentions, you're setting yourself up to be manipulated. Manipulators exploit this blind spot. They act helpful or friendly on the surface, but their real goal is to influence your decisions for their own gain. They might compliment you to earn your trust. They might play the victim to make you feel guilty. Or they might pressure you subtly, just enough to make you say yes when you should have said no. Machiavelli believed that power is everywhere, not just in governments or kingdoms, but in daily conversations, relationships, and social interactions. Anytime two people talk, there's a dynamic at play. Someone is leading, someone is following, someone is trying to influence the outcome. It might be harmless, or it might be deeply manipulative. So how do you protect yourself? The first step is awareness. Most manipulation happens in the shadows. It's not loud or obvious. It's quiet, smooth, even invisible, until it's too late. That's why Machiavelli said, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and imitate those who have been supreme." In other words, learn from those who understand the game. Learn from the manipulators, not to become like them, but to defend yourself against them. Now, let's look at some core tactics Machiavelli identified, tools manipulators still use today. 1. Flattery as a weapon. Machiavelli warned that flattery is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation. Why? Because it feels good. We all want to be seen, appreciated, admired. But when someone overdoes it, praising you too much, agreeing too easily, that's a red flag. They might be buttering you up so you'll drop your guard. 2. Playing on your fears. Machiavelli believed fear was a more reliable motivator than love. A manipulator might not scare you outright, but they may hint at consequences like losing approval, status, or support if you don't do what they want. It's subtle, but powerful. 3. Controlling the narrative. In The Prince, Machiavelli talks about shaping appearances. People care more about what seems to be true than what is true. Manipulators know this. They tell their side of the story first. They control what others see, hear, and believe. If you don't question what you're told, you become part of their version of the truth. Fourth, divide and conquer. A classic Machiavellian tactic. Manipulators sometimes pit people against each other, create conflict, or isolate you from others. Why? Because it's easier to control someone when they're alone, confused, or unsure who to trust. But here's where things get interesting. Machiavelli didn't think manipulation was always evil. He thought it was simply real, a fact of life. And that makes it even more important to understand. If you're too trusting, too eager to believe the best in everyone, you give others the keys to your emotions, your choices, even your future. But if you understand how power works, how influence operates, you can keep your independence without losing your compassion. It's not about becoming paranoid, it's about becoming prepared. Let's break down some of Machiavelli's most famous quotes and what they really mean in the context of everyday manipulation. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Translation: people believe what they see more than what they actually experience. Manipulators use appearances to their advantage. They act confident, dress well, and tell compelling stories, all to control perception. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Translation: people make promises when it's convenient and break them when it benefits them. Don't assume a promise means someone is truly committed. Look at their actions, not their words. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This one's big. Manipulators often wear a mask. They present a version of themselves that fits what others want to see. But behind the scenes, their actions may be very different. If you want to avoid being manipulated, learn to see beyond the surface. By now, you might be wondering, okay, I get it. People can be manipulative. But what do I actually do about it? That's where we're heading next. In the next section, we'll dig deeper into the types of manipulators, their psychological patterns, and the signs to look for. You'll learn how to spot emotional traps before you fall into them, how to keep your boundaries strong, and how to develop what Machiavelli would call practical intelligence, a mind that sees through the fog and stays in control. But for now, let this truth sink in. You don't have to be a master manipulator to protect yourself from one. You just need to understand how the game works, and that starts with seeing people, situations, and conversations for what they really are, not just what they appear to be. So stay with me, because this journey into the mind of Machiavelli is only just beginning, and by the end, you'll never see manipulation the same way again. Awesome! Here's on part 2 of your 30,000-word script for the video. How to never be manipulated again. Machiavelli. This part focuses on the types of manipulators, their common tactics, psychological patterns, and how they operate in everyday situations. The faces of manipulation. Recognizing the tactics before it's too late. Now that we've laid the foundation with Machiavelli's view of power and human nature, it's time to go deeper into the psychology of manipulation itself. Let's be honest, manipulators aren't always easy to spot. They don't walk around with labels or evil grins. In fact, some of the most manipulative people can seem charming, kind, and trustworthy. At first, that's what makes them effective. But when you know what to look for, you'll start noticing patterns. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's start with a question. What does a manipulator really want? The answer is simple. Control. Not always total control, but enough to influence your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions in ways that benefit them. And they don't always do it with force. In fact, the best manipulators rarely raise their voice. They don't threaten or scream. They suggest, hint, nudge, guilt, praise, pressure, gaslight. All while smiling, Machiavelli would tell us, manipulation isn't always aggressive. Often it's calculated, strategic, hidden behind good intentions. And if you don't know the signs, you'll walk right into it. So let's break down the types of manipulators you're most likely to encounter and how they operate. 1. The charmer. This is the person who makes you feel like you're the most special person in the room. They flatter you, compliment you. They make you feel seen and understood. But here's the catch. The charm is a tool, not a reflection of genuine care. Charmers often shower you with praise early on, create instant emotional intimacy, agree with your opinions to gain trust, use love bombing in relationships. Once they have you hooked, the tone changes. They start making requests. They hint that you owe them for their kindness, or they act disappointed when you set boundaries. Remember Machiavelli's warning. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Charmers are experts at appearing perfect until you say no. 2. The victim. This manipulator uses pity and guilt to gain control. They always seem to be struggling. Life is always unfair to them, and somehow they always need your help. They'll say things like, "I guess I just don't matter to you anymore. No one ever listens to me. I knew you'd leave me like everyone else." They make you feel like saying no is cruel, but what they're really doing is making you responsible for their emotions, a classic form of emotional manipulation. Machiavelli didn't write about victims directly, but he did say, men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. The victim uses emotional fear, the fear of being seen as cold-hearted, to keep you under control. 3. The gaslighter. Gaslighting is one of the most destructive manipulation tactics and one of the hardest to spot. A gaslighter makes you doubt your own memory, feelings, or perception of reality. Over time, they weaken your trust in yourself so they can replace it with their version of truth. They'll say things like, "You're overreacting. That never happened. You're being too sensitive." And after enough of this, you start questioning yourself. That's exactly what they want. Machiavelli talked about controlling perception as a tool of power, and that's exactly what gaslighters do. They make you question what's real, so you'll depend on them for answers. 4. The puppet master. This is the person who controls from behind the scenes. They're not always loud, and they rarely take direct credit. Instead, they plant ideas, steer conversations, and make others do their bidding without getting their hands dirty. They're often seen whispering behind closed doors, playing people against each other, avoiding direct confrontation, pretending to be neutral. This tactic mirrors Machiavelli's advice to rulers: control without appearing controlling. The puppet master uses subtle influence, often through others, to shape outcomes while maintaining a clean image. They're masters of plausible deniability. 5. The intellectual manipulator. Some manipulators use logic, intelligence, or so-called truth to dominate others. They overwhelm you with facts, twist arguments to confuse you, or talk down to you until you give in, because it's just easier. They might use overly complex language, talk fast to avoid questions, correct you constantly, use sarcasm as a weapon. Machiavelli warned that people are often impressed by appearances, and this includes appearing intelligent. The intellectual manipulator uses knowledge not to enlighten, but to control and shame. It's a subtle form of dominance disguised as sophistication. 6. The silent controller. Sometimes manipulation comes in the form of silence, passive aggressiveness, withholding affection, giving you the cold shoulder until you give in. They'll say things like, "I'm fine," when they're clearly not. Nothing at all. Just silence, withdrawal, or emotional distance. This is manipulation through emotional punishment. Instead of talking, they disappear. Instead of asking, they sulk. You end up walking on eggshells, always guessing, always giving in to avoid more silence. Machiavelli believed that punishment doesn't always need to be loud. What matters is that it creates fear or discomfort. The silent controller uses emotional withdrawal as a form of punishment. Now that we've met the cast of characters, let's talk about how they get under your skin. Most manipulators don't win through force. They win through what psychologists call compliance techniques. These are methods that push you into agreement without you realizing it, and many of them line up directly with Machiavellian principles. Some examples include the foot in the door technique. They start small, a minor request, a little favor. Once you say yes, they ask for something bigger. You've already agreed once, so it's harder to say no. Machiavelli would call this gradual conquest. Reciprocity trap. They give you something first, a gift, a compliment, a favor, so that you feel obligated to return it. This is especially common in sales, dating, and politics. Scarcity pressure. They make you feel like time is running out, like you'll miss an opportunity if you don't act now. This creates panic and lowers your critical thinking. Scarcity is a powerful trigger, and Machiavelli understood the urgency of fear as a motivator. Social proof. They show you that others are doing it, agreeing, supporting, believing. The more people seem to be on board, the more pressure you feel to comply. This taps into our tribal instincts, our fear of being left out or going against the group. By using these tools, manipulators slowly shift your decisions, your mindset, even your identity, without ever needing to raise their voice. But here's the good news. Once you see the playbook, you can't be played the same way again. Awareness is your armor. Every time you notice a pattern, call it out, at least to yourself. The moment you name it, you break its power. And remember, this isn't about being paranoid or assuming the worst in people. It's about being prepared, because when you understand the game, you start playing it on your own terms. Part 3. Fear, Guilt, and Trust, the tools of the manipulator's trade. Let's start with the truth that Machiavelli never shied away from. Human behavior is driven more by emotion than reason, and the manipulators who understand this, consciously or unconsciously, become incredibly dangerous. In The Prince, Machiavelli famously wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Now, this might sound harsh at first, but look deeper, and what he's really saying is this: fear is a more reliable motivator than affection. And that's exactly what many manipulators count on. They don't always make you afraid in the obvious sense. It's not always threats or anger. Often they create emotional fear, the fear of rejection, disapproval, abandonment, or shame. And once you're afraid of losing something, approval, connection, peace, you're easier to control. Let's break down the 3 core emotional tools that manipulators use over and over again: fear, guilt, and trust. 1. Fear. The invisible leash. Fear is the fastest way to shut down your critical thinking. When you're afraid, your brain switches from rational mode to survival mode. Manipulators exploit this by creating subtle anxieties around your choices. If you don't do this, something bad might happen. People might think less of you. You'll regret this decision later. They're not always threats. Sometimes they're just nudges that play on your deepest insecurities. The fear of being alone, the fear of being wrong, the fear of conflict. Machiavelli believed that rulers should use fear wisely, not through cruelty, but through calculated pressure. Manipulators do the same. They don't scream. They suggest. They imply. And before you know it, you're making decisions based on avoiding pain rather than seeking what's right. How to defend against it? Pause and ask yourself, am I making this decision from fear or clarity? If it's fear, take a step back. Breathe. Reassess. Don't give in just to escape the discomfort. 2. Guilt, the silent saboteur. If fear is the leash, guilt is the cage. It doesn't restrict your actions through threats. It restricts them through your own conscience. Manipulators use guilt to make you feel like the bad guy whenever you resist their control. They might say, after everything I've done for you, I thought you were better than this. I guess I can't count on you. These aren't arguments, they're weapons. And they work because most people are kind-hearted. Most people don't want to hurt others. Manipulators use that goodness against you. They make you feel like setting a boundary is an act of cruelty. Machiavelli's strategy? He'd say, detach emotion from strategy. You can be kind without being controlled. You can be moral without being manipulated. And guilt, when used against you, isn't your conscience. It's their remote control. How to defend against it? Ask, is this guilt coming from my values or from their expectations? If the guilt is being pushed onto you for saying no, stepping back, or prioritizing yourself, then it's not real conscience. It's coercion. 3. Trust, the Trojan horse. This is the trickiest one, because trust is essential in life. It's how relationships grow. It's how societies function. But manipulators often weaponize trust, not by earning it, but by rushing it, faking it, or demanding it. They'll say things like, just trust me, I'd never hurt you. You're overthinking this. Notice something. They're not proving their trustworthiness, they're insisting on it. And that's a red flag. Machiavelli understood that appearances can be deceiving. He even warned rulers to appear virtuous while being strategic underneath. Manipulators do exactly that. They build a mask of honesty, kindness, or wisdom, not because they are those things, but because it gives them leverage. And once you trust them, they stop needing to explain themselves. How to defend against it? Don't give your trust freely. Let it be earned over time through action, not words. If someone gets defensive when you ask questions, that's a sign they want your obedience, not your confidence. Let's connect these 3 forces, fear, guilt, and trust, with real-life examples. Example 1. Your boss asks you to work overtime. Again, you're tired. You've already worked extra this week. But your boss says, if you don't step up, I'm not sure how the team will manage. That's fear. Then, I thought you were someone I could count on. That's guilt. Finally, you know you can trust me. I always look out for you. That's a manipulation trifecta. Example 2. A partner who gets cold when you disagree. You share a boundary. Maybe you don't want to attend a certain event. Suddenly, they're distant, cold, silent. When you ask what's wrong, they say, I'm just disappointed. I thought we were on the same page. Again, guilt, fear of abandonment, and implied betrayal of trust. These patterns repeat in workplaces, families, friendships, and even online. And the worst part? If you're not aware, you might start gaslighting yourself. You'll ask, am I being selfish? When you're actually just protecting your space. Here's where Machiavellian thinking helps. It's not about becoming cold or ruthless. It's about becoming strategic with your compassion. Understanding that you can be kind without being naive, generous without being exploited, strong without being cruel. Machiavelli never told us to trust no one. He told us to trust carefully. He didn't say never show love. He said don't rely on it alone to keep people honest. Because when you understand that manipulation feeds on emotion, you start choosing your responses instead of reacting from fear or guilt. Let's take a moment to internalize this. Every time you feel pressured, stop and ask, am I afraid of something? Do I feel guilty about something I didn't do wrong? Is this person asking me to trust them or prove that they're trustworthy? That tiny moment of reflection can save you from weeks or even years of regret. We live in a world where everyone wants something. That's not a bad thing, but it means that influence is constant, and Machiavelli's greatest gift to us is the reminder to wake up, to see through the illusion. In our next section, we'll shift from awareness to action. You'll learn how to set firm boundaries, protect your energy, and become psychologically immune to the subtle control tactics that surround you, because freedom doesn't come from avoiding manipulators. It comes from understanding them so deeply that they can no longer touch you. So, the next time someone tries to guilt you, rush your trust, or make you doubt yourself, pause, breathe, and remember what you've learned today. You are not powerless, you are not naive, you are not weak. Manipulators only win when you play their game without knowing the rules. But now, you know the rules. You see the tactics, you understand the patterns. And that makes you dangerous, not to others, but to those who seek to control you. Machiavelli taught us that the world isn't always kind. But it doesn't mean you have to be cruel. It just means you have to be conscious. Choose clarity over confusion. Choose boundaries over guilt. Choose truth over emotional tricks. And most importantly, choose yourself. Because once you reclaim your mind, your choices, and your voice, no one can ever manipulate you again. Thanks for watching till the end. If this video helped you even a little, don't forget to subscribe to Cognit Haven for more deep insights into human psychology and powerful personal growth. Hit subscribe and start mastering your own mind.